So, Kiera, thank you so much for giving me up a bit of your time and coming on the Borderline podcast this evening. How are you?
I'm really well, thanks, Andrew. Thanks so much for having me as a guest today.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. Now, obviously, a lot of people local will not know who you are and what you're about, so I like to start off the same vein every single time. Can you just give us a little bit of background of who you are, what you do, and why you're so passionate about mental health, Kiera?
Yes. Well, as you say, my name's Kiera. I'm a solution focused hypnotherapist. Used to be a personal trainer and a yoga teacher, and due to my own mental health struggles and physical health struggles, I really needed to change career. But I really wanted to do something that benefited me and helped me get well as helping my clients. And fortunately, hypnotherapy kind of just drifted into my path. I knew nothing about it at the time. And then again, fortunately, the nearest hypnotherapy course to me was a solution focused hypnotherapy course, which was just mind blowing in its power. And as I started to learn about it and learn what it could do for me, and I started to sort of dismantle my life and put it back together using the tools that I was learning, just everything just clicked into place for me. And I became more and more interested in learning more and more about it so I could help my clients more and more. And it's been something which has just become an absolute, it's everything, it's changed my life, it's changed my friends, my husband's life. And it's something I just want to tell everybody about because not enough people know about it.
Yeah, well, you're true. I mean, like I said to you before we went into recording, last year I didn't know what remedial hypnosis was, and then I found out how effective that was for me personally. And like I said to you, when your email dropped across me, and I was looking at solution focused hypnotherapy, I've never heard of this as well. So would you be able to explain to me just the differences or the variation of what solution focused hypnotherapy is?
Yes. So there are, as you say, lots of different types of hypnotherapy. The main difference between what we do and traditional kind of therapies is so we're a blend of talk therapy and what you traditionally think of with relaxation, which is what you traditionally think of with hypnotherapy, which is deep relaxation. So our sessions are split kind of half talk therapy and half relaxation. The main difference between what we do and what other therapists do is we don't go back and talk about the past. So we educate our clients on how their brains work, what creates anxiety, what we can start to do about it. And we also continue to kind of drip feed this information to them through their sessions so that clients then get to a point where they have built up their own toolkit and they can look after themselves and they don't need to keep coming back to me. So another big difference between what we do and some other therapies is that this isn't a continual thing. Somebody would come to me for maybe 6 sessions. They would get a handle on how their brain works, on their own personal stresses and what is causing them to become anxious. The pennies start to then drop about what they can do about that. Armed with the couple of tools which I gave them to begin with, they then start that snowball kind of rolling, and that continues to go forward forever after they've stopped seeing me for sessions. So it's really wonderful because clients don't become codependent. They become independent and they become empowered with their own toolkit rather than them being reliant on me to feel good.
Yeah, the way you summed that up there, that there isn't that codependency anymore, because
Yeah.
that's half the battle with mental health therapy in
Yes.
general, is that there's
Yeah.
always going to be that dependency of when that stops, how am I going to cope? So it's really refreshing to hear that you're actually looking to the future, like we
Yeah.
spoke about before we
Yes.
started recording. You're giving these people hope, essentially.
Exactly, Andrew.
Yeah,
I think that's it. You've had your own deep, dark struggles, the same as me. And, it's really important to talk and we must keep talking. But there comes a point when the talking stops. What do we do then? And for a lot of my clients, I am the kind of last chance saloon. I'm their last resort because they've tried lots of other things and some things may have helped for a time, but they're at the stage where, so for instance, I've got a young man at the moment. he's come to me because he's really struggling with his sleep, and he's been to several other therapies, and they've all been useful, but he's like, I now need to physically actually be able to do something about it, and I need to be able to keep doing those things so I can keep myself well. And that's really the key thing for my clients, is they don't they equip themselves with the tools. So it's not me telling them what to do, it's them learning from me and putting two and two together and going, that's going to be really useful for me, and I can carry on doing that, and I don't need Kiera to be there all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very unique, because I know, personally speaking, that is something that I would struggle with. It's still something that I struggle with now. If I'm on about
Yeah.
therapy, it's okay, what do I do after that therapy? And
Yes.
that's really cool that you cement and, let's say, work with the clients to integrate these changes into their lives that will then almost be second nature to them. But
Yes.
what a difference that must make to them generally overall.
It's amazing. It's a privilege, Andrew. It's a real privilege to see people become well and realize they're more capable, more confident, brighter, than they ever thought they were, but also increase their radius of control in their life. Because you know what it's like, Andrew, when you're anxious, when you're depressed, sometimes you don't want to do anything, so you don't do anything, and then you get more anxious and depressed, and then it snowballs in completely the wrong direction. And once they become educated about the brain and sort of the parts of the brain we concentrate on, they can then start to become aware of when they're tipping sort of towards that downhill slide. And they, at that point, will think, now I actually have things I know I can do in order to start sending myself back uphill. So we educate them about the primitive brain, which is what it says on the tin, the primitive brain. We've had it since we were cave people. And when we're in that primitive brain, we can only experience anger, anxiety, and depression, because they're all primitive emotions that kept us alive. And we've still got that part of the brain because we need it in case the house catches fire or a kid runs into the traffic. But now our brains become really confused about whether opening an email is the same as a massive, enormous emergency. So one of my supervisors uses the analogy with the primitive brain of it'll react whatever the situation now. So if the toast in your toaster is burning, the fire alarm will go off. Just the same as if your house is on fire, the fire alarm will go off. And that primitive brain is like that fire alarm. It's reacting to everything. But then we also educate them about the intellectual brain, which is the part of the brain that makes really good decisions. And when we make good decisions, we stress ourselves less. And that lovely snowball carries on in that good direction. And then in the middle of all of that, we talk about the stress bucket, which is a really simple way for people to imagine all of the kind of stuff that's accumulated through their life has built up in this bucket. And if that bucket isn't getting emptied, then that's when our anxiety levels rise up and the primitive brain goes, oh my God, this situation's terrible. We need to get in that primitive brain and we need to treat this as an emergency. And that's where the issues begin of anxiety, depression, coping mechanisms, which we chatted about before. We start drinking more, overeating, over exercising, and that's when those things start to become really, really difficult. So I get quite a few clients who are drinking too much, or they want to change their eating, or they become too reliant on exercise and they want to kind of balance out their lifestyle again.
Yeah. No, that's even the analogies and the metaphors that you used to describe the different areas of the brain there was so easy to understand and follow with. And just by default, you would imagine just how easy it is to not to buy into the idea that it would work, but certainly to come to terms with, this could actually really help me, because I can visualize that bucket
Yeah.
overflowing, and I can visualize the primitive side of the brain, and I can see how that changes my decision making process throughout a day.
Yeah.
Generally, your clients, they all, is anxiety and depression more the conditions that you tend to deal with, or is there, PTSD, OCD is obviously be quite effective at that because of the primitive
Yes.
area of the brain, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Absolutely. Really, really good question, Andrew. So, with solution focused hypnotherapy, it can help anyone, I stress help anyone, cope better with anything. So, whether that's a physical disability, anxiety and depression, as you mentioned, or it might be that they come with a physical representation of stress that they might not realize is stress. So, they might come along and they might say, everything's absolutely fine, but I keep my hair's falling out, or I keep clenching my fists all the time, or oh, this really, really weird thing happens. I lose vision in one eye and then it comes back again. So sometimes the body is showing us that it's stressed, but the client may not realize that stress and they think, oh, hypnotherapy, that might be able to help. What they don't realize is that actually by coming to me, that problem may get solved, but there's also a whole load of other areas in their life which are going to improve because of getting a good handle on the sort of smaller areas of their life. So it's that kind of building control from a very small area, and it slowly starts to expand. And then the body starts to learn it's safe. The brain starts to learn it's safe. And for a lot of clients, they are ecstatic when they realize they're not going to have to talk about the past anymore. I
Yeah.
know for me, that was a huge thing because I've been through an abusive childhood. I've been through brain surgery that left me with a visual impairment. The last thing I want to do is go back and talk about all of that because it's stressful and the brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So just like if we watch a scary film and our heart starts to beat quicker and our palms start to sweat, that is a mirror, a sort of ripple effect all the way through our lives. It doesn't have to be, if we walk somewhere too fast, our body gets stressed.
Mhm.
It's all these tiny little things which people start to go, oh my God, I'm doing that. I didn't realize I was doing that. Okay, maybe I'll change that. Maybe I'll do something different. And we explain to them that that stress bucket gets emptied through sleep. So us helping them improve their sleep then helps them process all those memories out of that stress bucket. And as that stress bucket goes down, that area of control increases even more in their life.
Yeah, I can, like, insomnia is one of the things that I've always struggled with. Really, really, really poor sleep patterns. And when my sleep's bad, my decision making's bad.
Yes,
And I
absolutely.
know from firsthand, you're talking about stress factors there. I know from being a little bit more self-aware now, I can prevent myself from doing something, and I'm aware to that now. Don't do that. Don't send
Yes,
that email because you
yes,
know how you're going to feel in 2 days after it. That
that's
person might not going to feel it, but you're going to feel it. So don't send it. Which is great now because I know about it. But 2 years ago, I was lost, getting angry, getting all agitated. And you're just so right that when you're aware of these stress factors and you then understand them, you can manage them
that's so true,
massively.
Andrew.
Yeah,
And it's so different for all of us, isn't it? What stresses one of us does
exactly.
not stress the next person. And I think that's another big thing with a lot of people who come to me is that them kind of feeling that I've given them, or the sessions have given them permission to acknowledge that, to go, I don't have to feel silly that this stresses me, or actually all these tiny little things in my life, when I change them, they make a big difference. And that's not silly and that's not stupid. That's just me and who I am. And I'm learning to meet my own needs rather than putting myself up against other people.
Yeah, yeah, totally true. So, speaking more of the hypnotherapy, how would you go about, how to identify and address stress factors that maybe people aren't aware of, but they keep on coming back and they're stuck in those patterns?
Yes.
Could you just talk us through what you would typically do with a client to start
Yeah.
addressing those issues?
Sure, that's a really, you said a really good word there, Andrew, which is stuck. That word sums up how pretty I think everybody who comes to me is feeling. I know that feeling myself, as you know it well. You think, I don't know what else to do. So the first thing that we do is an initial consultation with the clients where they get to tell me a little bit about what the problem is, why they've chosen to seek support now, where they'd like to be in 6 to 12 months. And what I do is I get them to say how they would know that they were there. So, for instance, this young guy who's coming to me at the moment with sleep issues, where would you like to be in 6 to 12 months? I'd like to be able to go to sleep easily. How would you know that you'd achieved that? I'd be able to take a nap in the day. My body would relax, so they've got that small thing that they're immediately thinking, right, that's a thing I'd like to be able to do during the next year at some point. So we start to kind of do an almost kind of mini goal setting at that point of something that would be really meaningful to them. And we chat a little bit more. They give me as much or as little information as they want to, because that's totally up to them. And then we move on to the brain explanation, which really sets the bedrock for our work, is that education. So talking about, as we talked about, the primitive brain and the intellectual brain, what causes us to go into the primitive brain, so that build-up of stress and anxiety. And we explain that that doesn't need to be big things. It can be death by 1,000 paper cuts, negative thoughts, negative habits that all build up. And we talk about the fact that we're going to be continuing to talk about those things, that they don't have to remember all that information now, but this is the basis. And you can see the sort of pennies start to drop of, okay, they start to sort of notice that they're, what kind of things are happening to them when they're in their primitive brain, what kind of things they do. We then give them a really good chunk of information about sleep and how REM sleep, that last little 20% of our sleep cycles, is how we empty that stress bucket. This is a really massive thing for them, because we're talking about the fact that all those memories of trauma or, upsetting events during that REM sleep when we dream are getting moved from that primitive brain to the intellectual brain.
Mm-hmm.
Once they're in that intellectual brain, we've got emotional distance from them and they no longer stressors. So for instance, a lady that came to me with a fear of driving, after we'd worked together, was able to drive past a car accident and keep driving because she'd removed enough from her stress bucket that memory had actually been processed during that time. And that's something that people find really, really useful, because they think, oh, okay, so sleep is going to really help me in this. It's going to process those memories for me, meaning that we're not going to do any work and it's not still going to require effort, but actually that really painful, awful bit is going to be happening whilst I'm sleeping. And then we provide them with a couple of tools, Andrew. So the first one is a hypnosis relaxation, and we ask them to listen to it as they're going to sleep. And we explain this helps the brain waves slow down, and it helps them glide into a nice deep sleep, and it helps do a little bit of pre-sifting of that stress bucket, so that when they sleep, it can kind of get tidied away and sorted out nice and easily. It also gives them a tool that they walk away with, and they can literally go home, lie on their bed and put that straight on if they want to.
Yeah.
And they already have a tool in their toolbox that is going to start to help them.
Yeah.
And the second tool we give them is another completely free thing that you can do anywhere, is write down every single day what's been good. So not a gratitude journal, a what's been good. And we want to know what's been good for them, not what they think they should be grateful for, but what is actually significant to them. And we ask them to start with the easy stuff, but write down the stuff that makes you feel good, that makes you smile, or what's been different. I've realized this week that my sleeping pattern is better, or whatever that is. So by the end of the initial consultation, they're going home with information and 2 tools that they can immediately start to use. And when they come back for their first session, they bring that list of what's been good with them. And for about 20 minutes, we talk about what's been good. And there are lots of reasons for this, Andrew. One, we produce serotonin when we talk about what's been good, and this puts us in our intellectual brain. But secondly, it also allows that person to remember all the great stuff that they've done. I had a guy come into my treatment room, and at the end of the what's been good, I always ask my clients, put yourself on a scale today of general happiness. 0's the bottom, 10's the top. And he said to me, I'm a 7 now, but I was a 2 when I walked in here. But we've talked about all the things I've actually achieved this week, and I feel really good, and I'm really proud of myself. And that was really, really lovely. And that's why we do it, because the next thing we do is the miracle question. And that's where we do a little bit of problem solving, and the client sets themselves a very tiny goal for the next week. And that is the tiniest little step, so that they have a very manageable way to start moving forward. And once they've done that, we relax. And we do a nice 25-minute deep relaxation with them so that their brain can just relax and process and get ready for that good night's sleep. And then from then on, we repeat that process. So whatever the issue they've come with, that's the process that we follow.
That's incredible to hear. And I could even just listen, I'm gobsmacked of how effective that must be.
It's
Like, because I'm just
amazing.
hearing positive, positive, positive. You rarely
Yes.
use the word negative.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. Like you said before, you're not going back into that past. It's tiring telling about the same story. I totally agree with you. It takes a little bit out of you. So why would you want to do that with clients?
Yes.
And
Yes.
a question for you on there, something that I just kind of thought of when you're speaking. Because you're talking about the positives and speaking on the more of depression aspect, you must see a lot of people, specifically maybe with depression or not, that are simply no longer aware of the positives that they're still doing in their life because they're not giving themselves any
Absolutely.
self-gratitude for that. Is that, and then that changing of the mindset, that's half the battle with depression, is it's making people aware that you're actually doing better than what you think you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, Andrew. Because you know what it's like. It can feel like nothing's going right. You're not
Mhm.
doing anything right. And that you've made an absolutely excellent point there. And depression can, be a bit like starting up a dead car battery. You
Yeah.
try and it sort of nothing happens, and it takes a while for it to get going. And the neuroscientific reason for that is because the brain's got so used to no serotonin flowing through that it's removed and got rid of the serotonin receptors in your brain.
Yeah.
And it takes a while. So with that, what's been good, it's starting to trickle back through, and the brain goes, oh, you need some serotonin receptors. I'll give them you back. And so you make a really, really good point. It can take a long time, and it can feel, oh my God, nothing's going right. But eventually the brain starts to catch on. And isn't that just, it's just wonderful when people do
Fascinating.
start to see,
Yeah.
I'm doing well. I'm made these amazing steps forward. And it's an absolute privilege to watch that.
It must be. It must be so gratifying and so self-nourishing. To talk about negatives for a bit,
Mm.
would it be slightly more complex to, let's just say that instead of introducing positives, there were some negatives to draw back out of somebody? Maybe they're in patterns and they're getting bogged down. They're possibly stuck in that trauma or regret from the past. Is there a
Mhm.
slightly different approach that you would maybe use with somebody that is just, I like to use it all the time. Obviously, your fight, flight, and freeze. That somebody's just been stuck in that freeze mode for
Yeah.
too long. That's became the new
Yeah.
comfort, and they can't move out of there. Is that something that you come across regularly?
Yep, and we do exactly the same thing.
Oh,
And
wow,
even
cool,
if it
cool.
means me saying what's been good and me sitting in silence for 5 minutes, that is what we do. Because otherwise, we're just going back in that primitive brain. If we start, and I warn my clients of this, I say, look, when we do the what's been good, if you say something negative and it's not leading to a positive, I will stop you. And I'm not being rude, but that's what we're here to do. And if we start going off into a negative, you're just going back in your primitive brain. And there was one lady who started ranting, and I said to her, can you see where that's got you now? You're so far into your primitive brain now that we won't be able to do the miracle question because you're just lodged in that primitive brain. So no, we always stick to the process. And it might be that
Yeah,
I might let them maybe talk for a minute when we come in, because obviously I'm not trying to say that life's perfect and that we don't have problems. I have had enough of my own. And I would never want a client to feel I didn't acknowledge them. But after that, we move on, because that's what they've come to me for. I'm not a trained counselor. I'm a solution focused hypnotherapist. And, I even know some of my other solution focused hypnotherapists that I know have like buzzers that they will press if people start to talk about negative things, just simply because we want to do the best for our clients, you know, and that's what they've come for. So it's always just stick to the process, do what we do because it works.
Yeah, 100. See, I love that, because you could ask anybody with anxiety, racing thoughts, depression, how much money would it cost if you could tell somebody to just stop you from doing that action that would lead you to being stressed?
Yeah.
I know with my own mindset, going back to what we talked about before with that email, if I'm not going to push that email, I know now because I know what's going to happen. But 2 years ago, I would have paid countless amounts of money if somebody would have just told me, stop doing that. And that's what you're doing. You're telling that brain, you have to get out of this pattern. You have to get out of this focus. You know, thou shall not pass.
That is a really fantastic way of putting it, Andrew. It is because you know, I'm pretty blunt with clients sometimes, not in an aggressive way, but I'll just say, why are you here then? What if
Yeah.
you know, if everything's fine, why are you here? Or if you're not going to try, why are you here?
Mhm.
Because, you know, if often people come in and they're in deeply in their primitive brains and they can be rude and they can be difficult, but you know, our big thing is we have to stick to the process. And don't get me wrong, it's not, you know, I'm not a robot. I don't deal with people, you know, in exactly the same way. Of course you deal with each person differently, but I always make it very clear from the start, this is what we do and this is why we do it and this is why we're going to stick to it. And you know, obviously there can be days when they push back against it, but it's lovely when they come back the following week and things have changed again because they've continued to do what they need to do.
Yeah, yeah. And like you say, you've given them the toolkits. That's huge as well, because for me, talking personally again, for somebody that's been through
Mhm.
different variations of therapy, sometimes you're waiting for that, like that's your day of the week that you're looking for. Okay, I can
Yeah,
talk about what I need to talk to then, and that's like your milestones. But if you're giving that to people as well, that then comes to, right, I don't need to wait a week. I just need to get through this next couple of hours, and I can go back home. I can put on my music and I can relax.
that's
And
it, Andrew.
that in itself is huge, because people don't have that. People don't have that mindset as well to go, I can fix this today. I don't need to wait
Yes.
7 days.
There's something I can do. Exactly, Andrew. You know, there's something I can do just to make that next tiny step, because that's what we really reinforce to people. We don't want you to leap from 0 to 100 all in one. That's what that miracle question's really for. You know, a really good example of something someone decided on in the miracle question was, I'm going to fill my water bottle up at 10 p.m. tonight and put it in the fridge,
Mhm.
because the next morning it meant she had chilled fresh water and she could leave the house and she felt calm and she felt good about it all. You know, it's just those, like you say, if I can just get through the next few hours, there's something they can do. They can, like you say, lie down, listen to the relaxation, feel a little bit better, and then do the next tiny little thing that's just a little bit better. It just starts to build, and your brain starts to gain evidence. I can do this. Look how well I'm doing. And then they come back to me. I had one guy, lovely guy, young guy, who was recovering on a 12-step program from addiction, very serious addiction. And what he loved about solution focused hypnotherapy was that it was action driven. So he was deciding on something to do for himself. Like one week he decided he was going to buy himself new bed sheets because that's a real nice treat for himself. And the other thing he loved about it was that he, as he put it, I can brag in these sessions. I can say, I've done this really well. That worked out really well. Enjoyed that. And he said, it makes me really look forward to speaking to you because I feel good. I feel really, really good about myself. I'm doing all right. I'm doing well. So it's really lovely.
And as well, like the small goal setting, that's something that I picked up on. Like, you've got a background in fitness, so you'll completely relate to what I'm saying here. Mental health goals are completely different to typical goals. And what I mean by that is that I, I'm a big gym buff myself. At the start of January, you've got every right to turn around and say, I'm going to deadlift 60 more kilograms this year. I'm going to get up to 200 kg. Now, that's a pretty big gap from where we are just now. We're just say
Absolutely.
about
Yeah.
140 kilograms just now. That's a huge gap, and that's going to take months of training. But that's only attainable by small wins. Every kilogram on that is a
Absolutely.
win, but we don't process that as a win. We're still focused on that 200. Whereas in mental health, I'm going to get up and get a shower today. That's a win. That's a real win sometimes for
Exactly.
some people. And that then changes the mindset again, doesn't it?
It really does. And that's a massive one, as you know, through your own struggles, Andrew. You know, somebody getting up and having a shower, somebody washing their hair in the morning, cooking themselves a meal rather than buying a ready meal. All of these things. It's really nice because sounds nice is a weird word to use, but because I've been there and I've been
Mhm.
through it myself, and I've been there for a long time, many years, and I appreciate how big those things are when people tell me they've done them,
Mhm.
which is nice because they don't feel judged. They, feel that I understand the gravity of them making those
Yeah.
choices or putting in a boundary. I've decided I'm only going to see this person once a week instead of 4 times a week, or this person's ringing me every day and I've asked them if they could not, things like that, which are massively significant. Somebody who has great mental health and who's had great mental health all their life would think, well, what's so big about that? But they're so massive, and it's taking that control back of feeling that you can live rather than just survive and edge through each day, which is, yeah, it's just lovely to see.
And thinking as well. We're talking about practical, mostly practical things, and but like I said, the win of just thinking. Like I know in reflection now, if I think back for what I was 7 months ago, my thought process is different, and I'm much happier about my thought process now. And that again plants that seed of hope for the future. All right, well, we got past the last 6 months, and I'm much happier than what I was then.
Yeah,
What's possible in the next 6 months? In a
exactly.
very short period of time, you're talking about a year. If we're going back to that deadlift situation, it's still the same time period, but instead of having that one goal, that could easily be made up of 52 weekly goals, which is much better, much beneficial, much more rewarding, surely, than one goal a year.
Absolutely, Andrew. And as you know, goals change, don't they?
Yeah, yeah,
Sometimes
all
you
the time.
achieve something and you think, actually, I'm not going for what I was going for anymore. It's gone sideways a little bit, and I want to do something a little bit different. So you're exactly right. All of these much smaller goals, they increase that radius of control. An exercise I like to do with clients when they might be sort of halfway through their sessions, or even at the end of their sort of block that they bought, is to say, what is now in your comfort zone that wasn't in your comfort zone at the beginning? And then what is just outside of it that you'd like to be in that comfort zone? So that again, they get a chance to reflect back and go, well, actually, now I walk to work and I wasn't walking to work when I started, or I cook twice a week and I wasn't doing any cooking before. They get that chance to reflect on how well they're doing and how much they've achieved for themselves rather than
Yeah.
thinking about anybody else.
Yep. And healthier choices is healthier lifestyle in general.
Yeah.
Like I said, when you're thinking on your own 2 feet, if I can term it that way, when you're doing the things, sometimes you don't even need to tell anybody when you know that you're being positive and you're like, I'm
Yes.
kind of I'm owning this just now. I'm
Yeah.
getting on good. That's the momentum to keep on going a little bit again. And that for me is always the game changer.
Yeah. Oh, such a game changer.
Oh, it is massively. So behavioral change is essentially where I'd be going with this question.
Mm.
It's not something that we really hear about when we talk about mental health. I know that we talk about therapy and we talk about talking, but actual real behavioral change is obviously quite well underrepresented.
Yeah.
So, what, in your opinion, are the consequences of neglecting that aspect of our mental health and what is possible?
Yeah, well, really, really good point, Andrew. And I think out of all the podcasts I've done, you're probably the first person to ask that
Oh,
question.
thanks.
It's a very, very important one because sort of when people first come to me, we start with the tools that we give them, they start chipping away at their thought processing. So they start to think more positively because they're doing that what's been good, because they're relaxing their brain. So the thoughts start to very, very slowly change. And then that feeds behavioral change. Without the thought change, the behavioral change doesn't happen. And without the behavioral change, our lives don't change. Because if we don't change our habits, we don't change, what we're physically doing every day, there is no change, and I think this is where a lot of my clients say they've got stuck, is that they say, oh, it's all very lovely, reading these self-help books and whatever, but if your brain's not in the right place to actually be able to motivate you and plan and make good decisions, you can't act on any of those lovely pieces of advice, because your brain will just go, no, because it wants to do the thing with as little energy expenditure as possible. So if it doesn't have any capacity in that stress bucket, it will just keep doing the same primitive, unhelpful things because it doesn't have any room to do anything else. So hopefully that makes sense. It's like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
And without that behavioral change, nothing changes, nothing at all.
So would you get quite a few clients that are genuinely surprised? I guess that's the word that I'd use for that. That is, behavioral change isn't so hard. It's obtainable. Like I say, it's these small little changes in their days. Is a lot of clients almost blown away by, wow, I didn't actually really. I'm not saying you don't need to do much, because the work on ourselves is always a lot of
No,
work.
but you're right. You're right.
But you're right.
It's keeping it manageable. It's
Yeah,
keeping
yeah.
it absolutely. Yeah. And a big example of that is a client I had with, he's actually come back again because he's got another goal he wants to achieve. A client with ADHD.
Okay, cool.
So obviously my husband has ADHD as well, and this has been incredibly useful for him. He said for him, it's been the most useful thing he's ever done for that exact reason, that it has let him off the hook and allowed him to make these tiny changes without it feeling like it's, oh my God, this is so hard work. This is really, really difficult. Yes, people do absolutely, as you say, Andrew, go, God, I never knew I could change all of these things. One lady said, coming to these sessions has made me see I have a choice. There are a lot more choices in my life than I appreciated. And yes, they start with small things, but those small things are the fabric of my life. And they eventually lead to some really big changes. So yeah, you're exactly right, Andrew. People are surprised. And I had one young woman who came to me during her A-level, and she came out with a lovely phrase of, I've become more of an advocate for myself. And
That's cool,
I was like, oh, she's 17 and she said that. But she was like, why don't they teach this in schools? She was like, they go on about talking and talking and talking and talking about your feelings. She said, which is great and it can be helpful. But she was like, but you get to a point where you're like, what can I do to make my brain work better and actually help me to make better decisions? So that, coming from a really young person, was lovely to hear.
Yeah, that's that. It's the only weird thing about that is that I was actually speaking to, there's a young local lad that just started his own kind of mental health movement. Well, he's not started it. His quote was, I want to father a mental health movement. I thought, a 16-year-old came up with this.
Wow.
Like how self-aware. It's incredible, isn't it? Like, just so refreshing though. So refreshing, because it's haunting, it's horrifying that younger people are exposed to the mental health subject as a whole. That's never going to be ideal. But 5 years ago, I don't think you were getting teenagers talking about mental health in the way that we talk about mental health now.
Not at all. Not when I was a teenager. I mean, I'm 40 now, but when I was a teenager, no teenagers spoke about it. No, not many adults spoke about it, to be honest.
That's it.
So yeah, I love working with teenagers. They get it really, really fast. They learn really, really quickly, and they are really good at problem solving. They love it because it's something of theirs and they're gaining control in their own life. So it's really, really rewarding working with teenagers, and fun because they're lovely.
Yeah.
Despite what people tell you. Yeah, they're really nice.
But it's really helpful as well to know that teenagers are going down potentially them routes as well,
Yeah.
and they're seeking help, because to know that they're doing help and they're accessing help is a great win, to know that they're not suffering at home at night, because there's so much pressure of being a teenager or a young adult, as we all know.
Oh
And
God. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like I say, it's a thing of their own. The parents will say to me, "Oh, they do this and they're like this, and I have all these problems with them," and I have to kind of politely say, "Yeah, I've never met that person because they're a completely different person when they're with me."
Mhm.
And it's sort of politely reminding the parents we're working on what the kids want to achieve,
Yeah,
not what you want the kids to do.
yeah, that's so
This is what the
important.
kids are wanting for themselves. So yeah, that's always interesting, but it's really nice as well because they come out with some really amazing things that they want to achieve.
Yeah, the thing for another importance of that as well, and I'm on medication, SNRI actually. I have nothing against people. Obviously, I don't have any against people that take
No,
medication. I've got nothing against
definitely
people
not.
that don't like the views of medication. Each to their own. We're all entitled to our opinions.
Yeah,
But what I like about you here and there is that there's a different option for younger adults, because my issue with medication is that we're not addressing the root cause. Now, okay, we're not going back into the past with the solution focused hypnotherapy, but we're looking forward to the future, and we're managing them as you without the need of medical intervention. And that is hugely important, because you don't want to succumb to everybody to the same type of treatment.
that's it, Andrew. Mm, and it is completely personal. And what I always say to clients who are on meds and are happy to stay on meds, what we do in our sessions can only make your meds work better. So it
Yeah,
will
that's cool.
always work alongside that. Equally, I've had people come to me because they want to come off their meds. And it works absolutely brilliantly on its own. So, like, again, with sort of going back to ADHD, something like that, again, can work alongside meds, can work as a substitute for meds. It's such a personal thing. But yeah, I always say, this is a work alongside. It's a help you to not be on meds. It's whatever you want, but it's just there as an extra support, or there as 100% of your support, whatever you choose it to be.
Yeah, like I said, I love the way that you describe that as well. So the way that it will partner together, it would just make everything a little bit more effective. Maintaining that positivity, there's no negativity coming into the frame there whatsoever, and it's just something that I just keep on picking out, that this is a positive driven change, and it's very, very possible for everybody.
Yes, that's it, Andrew. Like the two things that I've mentioned, the relaxation, that's available on my website for free, and the writing down the what's been good, they're two things which can be done. Or even if you don't use my relaxation, YouTube is full of them. It's two things that can be done for free to start training your brain back in the right direction. And like I say, it's not like we're denying that there are problems. It's not that we want to completely ignore it and say that you have to pretend your life's perfect from now, but it's getting your brain to work for you rather than
Yeah,
against.
yeah, yep, it's brilliant. And finally, like I said to you at the very start, I like to end the episodes in the same way, and that's get asking you to give some advice to the listeners today. But I'm going to ask you two questions rolled into one, and that will be general advice for anybody that could be tuning in and they're just starting their own mental health journey. They're
Mm,
not too sure how to talk to somebody. They've got these feelings that are a little bit alien to them. What
mm,
advice would you give to them? And also, if they haven't heard of solution focused hypnotherapy,
mm.
why would you advise that as a good course of treatment to start understanding their mental health and how they can move forward with their life?
Yeah. So to go to your first question, if you are in a place where you're feeling confused, you're feeling stuck, and you absolutely do not know where to start, I think there are quite a few free helplines that you can call that can help, that can listen to you and also signpost you to other helpful free resources. Or if you're thinking, no, I would like to pay to go to see somebody, and you're starting to look at therapists, any good therapist will be happy to chat to you on the phone free of charge for you to get a little bit of an idea about, do I like this person? Could I work with this person? Does what they're describing sound like it will fit well for me? To get a little bit of an idea. Another great place, of course, is podcasts like yours, Andrew, where you can listen to lots of different people talk and pick up tips, get an idea of things that have worked for other people. But all of those things are free and will help somebody start to find out what they think would help them, because it's obviously not a one size fits all. I think going to your second question of sort of why come to a solution focused hypnotherapist is, again, like I was saying, if you're feeling stuck or you've tried lots of other therapies and you don't know what else to do, and you feel as I did, where perhaps you feel like I did, like you don't want to be here anymore and you just want to get off the world and you just want to move forward, it's the very best way to change your life in a manageable way, and it's all science based.
Yep.
So there's nothing in it that is kind of what some people might call woo woo or spiritual.
Yep.
It's all science based, but it's gentle and it's kind, and it won't stress you and put you through the ringer and make you talk about things you don't want to.
Yeah, no, it's been so cool to learn about it, and obviously I've learned a ton today, and I can't believe, like I say, that the positive aspect of it is just something that I keep on going back to: the removal of the negative, the removal of the need to go back into past trauma and to
Yeah,
look forward. Where I've moved to in mental health and mental health awareness is to, like I said, to try and spread hope. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're giving the hope back to somebody and you're saying, you know what, you're valid, you have purpose, and you're capable. You just need to understand again that you are capable and love yourself for it.
exactly.
Yeah.
That is it, Andrew.
Yeah.
People
Sorry.
people are so much more capable than they think they are. We just need the right steps to get our brains back into working in the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. Kiera, we've run out of time. That was
It's been so
incredibly
fun.
fast. It was very fun and fast. I'd like to thank you again. Honestly, I've absolutely loved this. I'm sure everybody that listens to loved it. You've been fantastic to listen to as well. You're so informative. You're
Thank you, Andrew.
so, yeah, honestly, you give off that positive energy as well. And it's been
Thank
a joy
you.
to have you on the podcast. For anybody that'd like to learn a little bit more about Kiera, all of her information is going to be in the episode description below. Do go check it out. I'm sure it can help you. And if you fancy, contact her if you'd like. Do you offer Zoom calls? I
I
meant to ask
do.
that.
I work
There we go.
online as well as face to face, Andrew, and online sessions work absolutely brilliantly. I had a client in America and it all worked absolutely beautiful. And I see people on Zoom a lot. So, yeah,
Excellent.
absolutely.
So there you go. You've got no excuse now. You can even go on Zoom and you can hook up. That would be terrific. And you can start making proper changes with your life and your mental health. Kiera,
Absolutely.
from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much once again for coming onto the Borderline podcast. And I wish you every bit of success in the future. And I'm sure you're going to keep on continuing to change people's lives.
Thank you, Andrew. You're an absolutely lovely, lovely host. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure's been all mine. Guys, like I say, all the information is going to be in the episode description below. If you are watching on YouTube, I would kindly ask that you just leave a little thumbs up, like, and if you'd like future content, go ahead now and subscribe. It would certainly help me and this channel out, and the likes of Kiera, to connect with more people that need that vital mental health support in their lives. So, from Andrew Willox here in IMO, from Kiera down in England, this has been the Borderline Podcast. Good night.